let's break. We'll bring in Frank Seravalli. He's hanging in. He's been listening to all this BS. We'll bring in
a lot of Blues Flames, Frank.
It's a lot.
Frank,
yeah,
Frank, I've only seen one worse moment when a goaltender fell asleep in St. Louis, and that was after a rookie party where me and Kipper may have over imbibed, and Kipper, absolutely, Frank, it was priceless. The puck left our zone, and Kipper leans back, puts his arms up on the net, and the Blues get it at like center, and they just throw it in, and Kipper doesn't even know. He's like, and it's in and out before Kipper recognizes it, and he starts kicking and scrambling around like, what happened? What happened? And it was already a goal. It was so good. But to his defense, there was no more that got past him that night. That was the end of it.
That sounds like Kipper.
Yeah.
Did
he
you
gave up one bad
Kipper,
one. That was it.
Did you say Kipper over imbibed? I mean, what are the odds of that?
That was his lucky. That's how he had. It was his lucky charm. That was his stress reliever, was to feel no pain.
It was a little bit disconcerting watching the first 10 minutes of this show. I'm not used to you guys actually talking hockey.
Once a month.
Yeah, sorry. That's our bad.
You know.
And just for the record, if I could opine for 1 second, Pinder, do not think this team is puckering with the lead. I tend to agree with Rhett that I think it's mostly purely on the goaltending.
Yeah.
Well,
but are they comfortable with Markstrom? Like, I just feel like no one's confident with Markstrom right now. It's not just Markstrom.
So this begs the question then is why isn't Vladar playing?
Well, we opined he will tomorrow.
He will.
Yeah. It feels like it's got to be Vladar.
Just look at the last calendar month. Markstrom 12 games, Vladar 3.
Prior to that, because I looked this morning, Vladar went on that string of games. He was in
6 of 8 or something.
6 of 8, 7 of 10 kind of thing. That was right after Jacob Markstrom came out and said, "I suck at hockey
right now."
And then Markstrom came back and was playing and getting no run support.
Yeah, he was posting better results. The soft goals went away. He got on a nice run. And it appeared it had worked, Frank, where you gave him time to work on his game. They toyed with his stance a little. Is he wider? Is he skinnier? Whatever it is. He's posting better results. And it's like, okay, our number one looks like he's rounding in form. And then this last 2 weeks, there's been some of the oopsies sliding back into his game.
And the only reason they got a point in Chicago on Sunday is because of Vladar in the third period.
He came in at the 21-minute mark and only allowed the OT winner. He was great.
And the only reason they got a point last night was because of a coach's challenge.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Or if the linesman made the right call, Frank. I mean, come on.
Frank didn't watch Afterburner or listen, but we talked about this. Part of the problem now for the Flames is going to be that they're in such a tight group to try and make the playoffs. And Darryl's old school. We know he's got his philosophies. He's not big on the young kids. They really have to prove themselves before they get a chance. He wants a number one goalie, Jonathan Quick, Mika Kiprusoff. He believes in that philosophy, play your number one, blah, blah, blah. But now what happens to make those changes, it's even tougher because the playoffs aren't a certainty. They're going to battle. I think they'll make it. They should be good enough to make it, but it's going to be a fight to make it. You can't let points slip away. And I don't know how many coaches, whether it's Sutter or John Tortorella or whoever it is, are willing to miss a playoffs and maybe put their job on the line by not playing their number one, even though the numbers might support Vladar. It's still a tough thing. We talked about it with Pelche and the young guys coming in. Well, if you're in a spot where every point is crucial, which it might be down the stretch, how do you insert guys that have never played and you don't know what you're going to get? You're more likely, especially Sutter, to go with guys that he knows. For him, he probably trusts. We might have different opinions on some of the players, but he trusts them, and he's not going to take any chances. It happens a lot, and it's not just because of Darryl Sutter, where a team gets in a spot where they can't give up points. They're too tight. We got to get every point, and then you have to overplay guys, and you overthink it, and you overcoach it, and it ends up worse. I don't have an answer for it, but that might be part of it.
Well, I think reading between the lines, there's a pretty clear. It seems to me like there's friction between coach and management. I mean, the zinger after the Chicago game, we need to shoot so much because we don't have dominant players. Like, that's not at the players. That's at the person who put this team together. And whatever, you bring up a Phillips, you bring up a Peltier, whoever it is, and they don't play and they're healthy, that's another zinger back at management. Like, yeah, I'm not taking this. I'm not, whoever you want me to play, I'm the coach and I'm going to make the lineup. So, I think that's gone on for a while now. And I wouldn't be surprised, to your point, Rhett, to see it continue. At this point, after 1,400 NHL games behind a bench, you're not going to wake up next week and see a different Darryl Sutter. He's not going to suddenly just do things a different way. He gave Vladar a run. Clearly, right now, the trust factor belongs to Markstrom, whether that's deserved or not. And I think you could make a strong argument, given what the numbers say, given that it seems to me like I believe that Markstrom is dealing with a crisis of confidence more than anything, that you could point to as holes in his game. Yeah, can something, here or there be tightened up for sure. But when you see the big boy rebound like you did last night, that's not a hole, that's confidence. And when you see him flog himself publicly, that's confidence.
Is there, and this is always tough because it kind of goes to personal life. Was he not just getting engaged, or is there kids involved here? Is there, you never know with that side of things, right? It's probably none of our business, but that's also a possibility in my mind where there's stuff going on off the ice that might be playing into this. Because he played so much better last year.
I have honestly no insight into the personal aspect. That's not something I regularly look into or check in on unless there's some reason to believe that it's an issue. I haven't heard anything. But to me, I think it speaks to the nature of the position. Like, you look any year in and year out, there's a list of 4 or 5 guys that you can hang your hat on, and Markstrom was in that category for a while. But there's so many good goalies that have a blip that go from 925 to 900 in the blink of an eye. And for whatever reason, there's no explanation in that season as to why that is. It's not, part of it is what's happening in front of him. Part of it is his numbers. They never seem to rebound. I don't know why that is. It's like from start to finish, they can't ever get it together.
And to get back to the coach and the comments he makes, he spent a lot of time last year talking about how we don't have game breakers. This is how we have to play when we don't have a superstar. And it was, especially in the context of Edmonton being in division, they had 3 40-goal guys. Yeah, even when they do have these things, it's almost like he needs that us against the world. We're all blue collar. Like, that's the narrative he's always pushing, even when it's not necessarily correct. They had the best line in hockey last year at even strength. That trio, Gaudreau, Tkachuk, Lindholm, was absolutely dominant. There were game breakers, but even then he wouldn't acknowledge them as such.
And I know he struggled at times this year, and you watch him play the last few weeks and you can feel like it's starting to come together a little bit. But Jonathan Huberdeau, regardless of this year's results, the fact of the matter is he's one of the premier playmakers of his generation, one of the best passers in the game the last 10 years. Like, if you can't find a way to have him adequately replace the playmaking ability of Johnny Gaudreau, part of that, is it on the player? Yes. But part of it, I think, is also on the coach and maybe how he's viewing him and deploying him.
Yeah, I don't know that you'd put Milan Lucic at the top of the list of finishers you could put your best passer with.
No.
That's where he's played for 2 weeks.
A lot of this for me is also, they don't look like a team that's going to the rink and it's joyous and exciting and fun and exuberant, and you know what I mean? And there's a point where professionalism has to play into it, and sometimes you don't have that excitement, that exuberance and energy, but it's a lot easier to go and play when you are having fun and you're enjoying being at the rink. And I don't think that this group right now I don't think that's the calling card. I don't think they're pumped right now to be hanging out in St. Louis for another day. I don't think they're pumped to be getting to the rink. I don't see it. Even when they score goals, it's not, you know what I mean? Like, you can watch teams. And sorry, I always refer to it because I'm here now. But with the Sabres, you see them score, it is like we have climbed Everest every time they score. And they score a lot, but they're freaking pumped to do it. They got great goal songs. It's enjoyable. They're having fun. They like being at the rink. I don't get that vibe from the Flames.
Okay, so first off, no one has fun in St. Louis. Like 2018 Cup Final, I went to the casino every single night and just tried my best to not get mugged on my way back to the hotel. And second, how could they possibly have any fun when they've had a size 12 cowboy boot up their ass the entire season?
Well,
it's totally true. Even the 5-2 start, like it felt tense when they dropped a couple. It's like, why are we throwing the lines in the blender in game 8? You were a third period gaff away from beating the Oilers, and now everything is, we got to reinvent the wheel. Like, even Darryl feels like he's oversteering a ton. That's not a fun place to be when Darryl's tight.
And I wondered what Darryl won the Jack last year, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a detriment for a guy like Darryl. Now he's ultra hyped up all of a sudden, because he's the one guy that he would never want to be known as taking his foot off the gas or being cocky or a big wig. It's like, I'm a blue collar workaholic. So he's probably oversteering it right now, because it sounds stupid, and it probably is, but I actually think him winning that trophy last year put more pressure on him this year to try and do more to prove that he was worthy of it. It's like, just go, coach. Just let them have fun. Let them smile. Let them enjoy being at the rink. Just take a foot off.
And he loses his two best players, right? He loses his 2 40-goal guys and knows how much harder it's all going to be this year. I don't know. You guys talked about it last night, too. Jacob Pelche is here. He's a first-rounder. Does he get in? You talk about the disconnect between management and coach. I'm sure Treliving would love to see Pelche get in.
I don't think he recalled him to not get played. And I don't think Darryl has a lot of interest in playing him. Darryl might prefer the Rune dog, Kevin Rooney, right now. I mean, like, where he is on the spectrum of trusting rookies versus veterans. He is the most pro-veteran coach in the league. I don't know that I can think of one more.
Well, and you mentioned this on the Afterburner last night, that Darryl is regarded as a guy who he's going to ride as number one. He rides as number one. He's had some really good number ones. You said he had Kiprusoff, right? Yeah. Kiprusoff in Calgary, he was lights out. Of course you're going to ride that guy. Jonathan Quick in LA. He could trust those guys because very seldom did those guys screw him. Right now, Markstrom's the number one, but he can't trust him right now. Yep. So it's, you know what it is? DGAF. Don't give a fuck. You win, you're in.
Yeah, I think it's at that point Thursday. I really do. Like, even for Darryl.
Like, look back to Phillips. Like, if you want a roadmap on Pelche, like 2 games, 904 ice time average, and how many as a healthy?
And a post. Like, he wasn't bad.
And on one hand, it feels like if you're looking at team failure or team struggles and you expect a kid to come in and fix them, I get that's not the answer. But it's part of building this team. It's part of finding answers, solutions. What do they need? Well, boy, Treliving, as you said, Frank, Treliving's look for a scoring winger, been looking for a winger. Can't find a winger, get a winger. He's brought a couple wingers up that are their own homegrown guys that they've developed. Phillips has been here forever. He's been leading the AHL and still can't get in.
Yeah.
If there's not a scenario that exists more relevant than this, then what is it? I don't know what it is.
And Pinder and I were of the opinion last night that Chicago was the great scenario for the insertion of youth and excitement and young kids coming. Well, we didn't get to practice. We had to travel. Didn't get a morning skate. So I can't play the young guys. It's like, BS. That's the perfect time to play the young guys, because they don't need a morning skate.
Chicago doesn't even know who they're playing. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating. Like, I've been talking to people around the league, and they were like, "Oh man, I didn't even realize that guy was having a good season, and he's on my team." Like, I'm telling you, they're not even watching their own NHL games, because that's not what this season is about. And if you can't put a young guy in the lineup for that game, you might as well just wave the white flag.
Yeah, send him back
one
to
guy's got
Calgary,
an extension, and the other guy's in the last year of his deal, right? There's no problems here.
And then at the same time, you look at it, and they've collected what's the points? What have they been doing?
Points in 12 of their last 15.
So
they don't lose in regulation, Frank. They just decided they're going to choke away leads and lose in overtime.
I mean, that's like death by 82 cuts is what that is. Just
well, and it's weird because there's still so much reason to think this group can be so much better, but it's so hard when they're not playing well to see Darryl making this environment anything but miserable.
Well, we can go round and round. They did play well. That second period, they flipping dominated the Blues. They were
that's the most frustrating part, I think, is that even when everything's clicking, it's kind of like my golf game. I could drive, I can hit the green, I can't putt for shit. You go through it, you fix one area of your game, and then all of a sudden, hey, the goaltending's not working. We get better play from Weegar. We get Huberdeau starting to pile up points, and Jacob Markstrom gives up a pizza in the slot.
Like that's true.
And Japan, he finally scores. You got a good line for him. Yeah, Luch isn't dragging around. And there's the worst goal he's allowed in a month.
Should be leaving the rink just pumped. Let's go for a pint, fellas. Let's get a meal. Got the day off tomorrow. Blah blah blah. Ah, damn it! Now we're watching video.
Now we're watching video, and we might get mugged in St. Louis. Hey, I mean, like.
Because we got to you late. What's your schedule? How long we got you? We can
I'm good. I got all the time in the world for you guys.
All right.
Except to play on the hockey team.
Except to play with us.
Jasper,
yeah,
then you got nice. All the time for the Oilers guys.
I figured with this dry January that I'm doing, you guys would just be really bad influences.
It's a terrible idea, by the way.
It's the end of January. You get that far, we'll give you a participation medal for dry January.
The heat seems to be on in Edmonton. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. I mean, how would we capsulize what Rhett said yesterday? That, Connor McDavid's never really had a leader there to help him lead, a mentor, that sort of thing. Maybe when you have two players who are so far and away better than everybody else, does that impact how you play? There are people already calling for Jay Woodcroft.
He was just brought in a year ago
to be fired.
He was not.
And then we talked about management not really doing a lot to, how could you waste away a 150-point season? Well, they're 10th by points percentage in the West right now.
Yeah. What you can't debate is you got to win. That this coming draft is great. There's lots of prospects. That won't fly in Edmonton. It's another year of Draisaitl and McDavid. They have to make the playoffs. What's your read on the Oilers?
They're in a storm right now. I think there's no doubt about that. To hit on some of your points, you look at whether there's a coaching aspect of it, of your 24 and younger players that have not progressed at all and in fact have regressed this season. They have run into their own goaltending issues this year. That has been significant and costly. That Jack Campbell signing, this is not me patting myself on the back. When I didn't pick the Oilers to win the division this year, I said, I don't think Jack Campbell's very good. And I think he's also a guy that really struggles with confidence. A lot of it is between the ears for Campbell. When you look at this team and their roster construction, that's another thing. Definitely, I think some complacency in terms of the management group and how you go about fixing it. But the truth is, they don't have the option to sit on the sidelines and say, hey, well, Evander Kane's coming back on January 19th, and all of a sudden, magically, everything will be good. The other part is, where do you start? What is the number one priority? Is it a defenseman? And if it is, this is what they're actually arguing about internally in the Oilers front office is, what kind of guy do we go get? Is it some would call offensive or puck mover? Or is it a stalwart, a Rhett Warrener type, that's going to clear out things around the net and survive some of the pressure against the forecheck?
Some of us want to play guilty and get the boys on the road after a loss.
They actually don't know the answer, is the truth. So where do they go?
Would you offer one? What do you think is the issue? Because I don't think it's it's that hard to note that they're goaltending and they need D and what is the answer? That's the.
I believe it's a true defender. When I look at that roster and I look at how well their power play clicks, like you could talk about Jacob Chychrun. I think they need him like a hole in the head. Like they've got Barry and they've got Bouchard who can both play on the power play. Chychrun's not even a facilitator. He's a cannon. He's someone that you feed for shots. He's a shot threat. And he's a below average defender. So what wins in the playoffs? To me, it's adding someone, you just looking at the market this year of Vladislav Gavrikov who can defend well. That's their ideal, I think, stylistic fit. They're not sold on that. I think they're potentially looking at guys that they think can make small area plays, 6 to 10 foot passes that can help get them out of trouble and up and on their way and get the puck in the hands of their forwards. And Rhett, I think you hit on a really interesting thing that I don't think has been talked about enough, in that when they had a team last year with Duncan Keith and with Mike Smith, the fiery competitor, Keith the winner, I think they lost a bit of that influence on McDavid and Draisaitl that isn't there this year.
I think
they also changed coaches, though. You don't want to give too much credit. I mean, if it was going so well with those two, they don't fire their guy mid-season. But they're certainly veterans that had leadership voices.
To that point, I mean, I've not had a ton of conversations. Obviously, Frank, you're more the insider in that. But my understanding is they do kind of miss Duncan Keith a little bit. He was a guy, just by his presence, there was that kind of gravitas that he brings to the room. And just, even when you're not playing, it just kind of, okay, there's a guy here who's done this before.
To me, it's very telling that he didn't want to come back. Now, I don't know the details of what Keith decided that time was up. Maybe it's his body, maybe it's other things. It's not
he was done.
But it's still interesting, right? If you're Duncan Keith, yeah, you've won. But if you think that you're a season away from maybe another cup, don't you stay?
I think physically he couldn't do it anymore. I think he was dealing with some issues that he was just saying, I can't play.
Then that's that. Anyways, but I've thought that all along with the Oilers group, and once McDavid's been there, I said it for years. Well, who's the guy that's showing McDavid how to be the main guy? It's awesome that he can go score 150 points. It's amazing. He's the best player maybe ever. I'm in agreement with his talent. The difference is, can he influence? You said it. Those young guys that are there, they're regressing. He's got to be the leader that brings those guys up, right? Messier and Gretzky were there. Then you had Curry, Anderson, all the rest of them that elevated their game, and they win championships. If you got guys that just take over, you have to bring everyone along with you. And I don't know that they know how to do that.
I want to ask you, Rhett, because you would have watched him up close and played against him. What changed in Steve Yzerman's game that he went from a 155-point player in this league to an 87-point guy and winning Selkies? That's when the Red Wings started winning Stanley Cups. Did you notice a difference in his game? Because I think that's maybe a parallel here. Not saying take your foot off the gas in terms of point production if you're McDavid, but does he have to play a different way? Is there any onus on him? Because I think some Oiler fans, and no one's criticizing McDavid or Draisaitl and saying you're the problem, but they look at it and say, we have a 3-2 lead with 10 minutes left in the third period. Why are you trying to feather a backhand through 3 guys in the neutral zone to send someone in on a breakaway? So walk me through what changed with Yzerman.
Well, I think Yzerman changed. Wasn't Scotty Bowman getting there and helping out? I think that a guy that has that much clout and has won as much had to rub off on Yzerman a little bit. I'm not sure the exact dates of when Scotty arrived and when Stevie kind of started to turn that corner. But I think there's some comparables to what you're saying. And again, I don't think you want McDavid to drop back and give you 100 points instead of 150. I just don't know that he's ever been taught or mentored to go, dude, you have to find a way to include the rest of your team, and you may have to sacrifice 10 points here. And I don't even know that it's a selfish thing. I don't think it's a recognized thing that he understands. And I said it when Woodcroft was hired. I don't think Woodcroft is the guy to challenge Connor McDavid. So Connor McDavid wants to score 200 points. What the hell's Woodcroft going to tell him? No, we gotta play some D here. Woodcroft's going to go, yeah, okay, whatever you need, bud. Right? Like you get a veteran
and more
coach.
to the point,
Tippett was that, but okay.
So more to the point, if they go and acquire someone, we talk about their bottom six having no dimension and anything else that they can bring to the table. Let's say they go out and move the deck chairs around and find a good penalty killer, find a good face-off guy late in games. Does anyone really think that Jay Woodcroft, excuse me, I think of his brother all the time, that Jay Woodcroft is going to send out, third line face-off guy to take a draw in the last 30 seconds of a game instead of McDavid?
I don't.
I think this is the problem is like, he's so good. Why aren't they better? I just think we're trying to get a little too cute. Like, is this not on the GM? Like what's Ken Holland's signature move at this point? He's been there for 3 years.
Through this
4
whole
years?
conversation, we don't need to go a ton. I think it's a checklist. I think that there is roster makeup, cap distribution, goaltending, leadership,
all that
depth,
falls under the GM,
coaching.
right?
I think it's
sorry.
So
when you add all those things
there's
up
no
and
fix-all.
you have a checklist, I think of like Chevy Chase in Vegas Vacation as at the Hoover Dam. Like he takes his gum and he plugs it in here, but like there's just something else that's flowing over. Like you've got leaks all over the place. How do you appropriately plug all of those holes in one 52-day period? I don't see it.
You don't.
And that's why I was saying
this is the amassing of a lot of bad managerial or just mediocre managerial decisions over the last 3 years. Like when you pay Darnell Nurse to be a player he's never going to be, when you don't give any sort of depth veteran leadership wise, when you cannot get your young players developed and incorporated. Like Philip Broberg was a reach in the draft and they passed on Zegras. They passed on Caulfield. They passed on Boldy. Like, I'm sorry. Everything we've talked about falls at the GM's feet. And if not him, whoever's above him.
And it goes back further than 3 years, I think. The guy before was no better.
Yes.
Right? Like,
they just got out from Koskinen.
Screw up.
Yeah.
This is a long-term screw up. And it won't be a one-person in fix. No chance.
And now you're in a spot where Connor McDavid's in his 8th season, Leon Draisaitl's in his 9th. And if you think about it from a 30,000-foot view, you've used up half the useful life of two of the best players of their generation.
The primes.
It's the worst. And you know what's sad? And the Oilers fans will flip out and I don't give a shit. It's the worst case scenario for the NHL. They're in a shitty market in Edmonton, small market town, and you got the best players in the world, two of the best, maybe, and probably one of the best ever, and they're potentially going to be out of the playoffs again, or they've been out early in a lot of playoffs. Like, it's a terrible, terrible situation for the NHL. This guy should be front and center all over the place, playing in Chicago, St. Louis, any of the big markets, going deep into playoff runs, highlight reel all over, and we get none of that. None of it. You get 150 points and pack it in at the end of the year.
And they beat one of the best Flames teams of the last 2 decades in 5 games last year.
Well, that's a
What's
scary
that saying?
beat anyway.
Oh, good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to rub that in there at the end.
Yeah. Thanks, Frank. See,
See, Frank, we like to talk.
Good, yeah.
We're good. We're good at talking hockey when things are shitty. We're not.
I was going to say, what if we
We're
were in
therapists.
Boston?
Oh, it'd be a
Hey, how
boring show.
friggin' boring would
We
we?
talking about crab cakes?
Terrible.
Yeah.
There's 2 really bad. I learned this as a beat reporter in the locker room every day, traveling to every goddamn road game. It was the 2 worst teams to cover are the best team in the league and the worst. Everything in between is like chef's kiss.
Boston has played 40 games. They have 4 regulation losses.
And they had significant time without Marchand.
Where's the fun in that?
Without McAvoy. Like, this is insane what they've done.
We talked about it yesterday, Frank. The Leafs are having an unreal season. 25, 9-7. They're 11 points back in their division. Like the
Bruins are on pace for 139 points.
In a down year.
Oh, you got out of the first round. Congrats, Toronto. Off to Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Anything? Well, we've been keeping you for anything going on. Anything kind of rumor-wise, firings, trades, anything cooking?
Nothing super front burner. Teams are conducting
what?
their scouting meetings this week, and that's the big. Once we get on the other side of that, this week, next week, leading up to the All-Star break, that's when the blueprints are being crafted, and then we'll be on our way.
Oliver Shillington. I know you had a little bit of an update, which isn't much of an update.
Yeah, so Shillington is still in Sweden. He is skating on his own, occasionally with a team, is still working out, remains in the NHLPA Player Assistance Program. And there's no answer to this point. The Flames are in a spot where they'd like to get one, I think ideally by the end of the month. And they don't want to push him in any way, but at some point they need to know, because they either need to save room for him or they need to go out and try and replace him. I think best case scenario, what they're looking for is for him to come back and go through the paces and go on a conditioning stint and get ready to hop in the lineup, because what you got from him last year playing in a top 4 role at $2.5 million, you can't go out and find that on the open market. It's just not going to happen. Not at that price point. So they then would have to throw
less than that last year.
Yeah, they then have to throw assets at that as well. So in a perfect world, that's what they're holding out hope for. I would say at this point, the odds are very stacked against that. I would say there's probably a fair bit of pessimism that he'll be back. If I had to handicap, I'd say 85-15, something like that. But you don't know until you get to that point where it's basically like, hey, we need to know one way or the other, got to make a decision.
And I'd probably put it at 85-25, but my math isn't as good as Frank's. It's probably where I'd put it. Frank, thanks for hanging in. Thanks for going on. And again, I guess we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, keep your head up, Frank.
Yeah, all right. Sounds good. See you guys.
Real good. Thanks, Frank. There he is, Frank Seravalli. Good stuff today on all things Flames, Oilers, all of that.